Victoria Lee, The Arts of the Microbial World. Jeannie N. Shinozuka, Biotic Borders. Anand Yang, Empire of Convicts. Vincent Goussart, Heavenly Masters. Bryna Goodman, The Suicide of Miss She.
Given the sheer number of monographs and dissertations submitted for the 2023 ICAS Book Prize, the IBP, the task of choosing the best work in each category is always a difficult one. So I'd like to thank not only the publishers and authors who've submitted their works to the competition, but also to thank all of the judges involved in the IBP for their contribution. My thanks also to the IAS staff involved in the process of collating the submissions and ensuring they reach the judges in good time. The ICAS Book Prize and Dissertation Prizes have, since their inception, become the biggest and most widely recognised awards in the field. To be recognised by these prizes is a significant honour and a global acknowledgement of the academic standing of the authors. The winning monographs can be unreservedly recommended to all scholars in the field of Asian studies. The quality of the submissions that we receive is such that many wonderful works of original scholarship must go unrewarded as the judges reduce the number of submissions down to the long lists in each category. Some of the works are, of course, recognised by the giving of accolades, which celebrate the best works in specific categories, with the works on the long list generally those the judges conclude to be of particular significance in and interest to the wider field of contemporary Asian studies. Only after close reading and discussion with fellow judges can we reduce the long list to a short list from which the awards are made, and it is a significant mark of esteem for those whose monographs are shortlisted. From those shortlists, we arrive at the prize winners in the various categories. We have once again completed this lengthy process, and to announce the winner of the 10th edition of the IBP, I'm pleased to introduce my longtime colleague and friend, Dr. Paul van der Velde, who has been at the helm of these awards since their inception. Over to you, Paul. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Alex McKay, for all your contributions to the ICAS Book Prize. As a member of the Reading Committee for the Humanities, but specifically for your efforts as a long-time chair of the Dissertation Reading Committee until 2021, significantly increasing the number of dissertations submitted. Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to announce the prize winner of the Humanities section of the English language edition of the 10th edition of the ICAS Book Prize. Before I do so, I take the liberty of saying a couple of words on my experience with this prize, which we founded 20 years ago and has grown into a biennial transcending multilingual book prize with nearly 1,000 submissions. While before I was always in the organizer's seat, now retired for the first time, I had the pleasure and privilege of feasting on nearly 200 books submitted for the Humanities section of this 10th edition. Now I understand why we never had a problem forming reading committees, because its members are really spoiled by the broad vista the publications offer on Asia. But in the end, one has to break through the gaze and come up with a publication of which you think encapsulates Asia within a global context now. But did your best book also score with the other members of the reading committee? Fortunately, this was the case, and I'm happy to announce that the Arts of the Microbial World, Fermentation Science in 20th Century Japan by Victoria Lee, published by the University of Chicago Press, is the winner of the Humanities section of the 10th edition of the ICAS Book Prize. The theme of the previous edition of ICAS in Kyoto was crafting a global future, and Lee's book certainly gives meaning to that theme because isn't it high time that we embrace the microbial world instead of seeing it as an enemy which must be fought and eradicated? This does not only apply to healthcare, but to many fields of production which should become craft based instead of chemistry based. The microbiological crafts developed in Japan in the 20th century should be embraced worldwide so as to improve not only understanding microbial but also humane interactions within society. Dr. Lee, on behalf of the Reading Committee of the IBP English Language Edition, I wholeheartedly thank you for your contribution not only to Asian studies, but also to the process of crafting a sustainable global future. Thank you.
I am extremely honored and grateful to the prize committee to receive this award. I would like to thank Angela Kreger, Benjamin Ellman, and Yasu Furukawa, who were advisors and inspirations to me from the project's inception, the community of fermentation scientists and science studies scholars in Japan for their support of the project, my wonderful colleagues in the history department at Ohio University for the nurturing environment they have created for my research, and the Paris Institute for Advanced Study and the Max Planck Institute for the History of Science, which were outstandingly stimulating places to write the book. Thanks also to a number of generous mentors at the dissertation and early career stages in Japanese history and history of biology, including Federico Marcon, David Howell, Philip Brown, Julia Adeni Thomas, and Karen Rader, to fellow historians of microbiology and also historians of East Asian science for the dynamic fields they have helped create. Finally, I'm indebted to my husband, Joymin Lee, for his love and support throughout the many years of researching and writing this book, and to my daughter, Rosie, who entered the world after the book was finished and inspires me to look forward.
Victoria Lee, congratulations once more on winning the ICAS Book Prize in the Humanities for 2023. I'm really happy you're able to join me here to tell us about your book and your ongoing research. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
So again, the publication is called The Arts of the Microbial World, Fermentation Science in 20th Century Japan. Could you start by introducing people to the book, what it's about, and how you came to it?
Yeah, I focus on a concept, the microbe, along with its attendant scientific institutions that were imported from Europe into Japan in the late 19th century. And I explore how they functioned in 20th century Japan. What the microbe has often represented in historical accounts is a great break between pre modern and modern control, as well as the universality of scientific institutions across the globe. This breaks down when we look closely at developments in Japan. Fermentation science shows us the prominence of another tradition of microbial control, not just that of eradicating microbes as pathogens, which was mainstream in microbiology in Europe and North America, but also a productive tradition that treated microbes as living workers that could make things for everyday consumption and that might help society solve various economic or environmental problems. The existence of a productive tradition of microbiology is not unique to Japan, but the Japanese case was distinctive in the scale of state support for fermentation science in the 20th century. The book looks at several industries, including traditional brewing, such as sake and soy sauce, nutrition, biofuels, penicillin and antibiotics, and flavor science from 1900 to 1980 to show that they were shaped by continuities with the early modern period. In this way, the book argues that cultural difference and indigenous categories continued to matter in 20th century science, even in disciplines that were entirely imported, pushing back against the idea that there was a great divide between pre-modern and modern science and one single path of modernity.
As a scholar, how did you come to this topic of microbes in Japanese science in the 20th century? What led you to write this book in terms of your personal interests?
We think of scientific institutions as being part of the landscape of modernity, and they're often assumed to be universal, with origins in Europe or North America, and that were then transferred elsewhere. I've always been interested in exploring this in a non Western context since I come from an undergraduate background in science. And when I came into the history of science, I wondered if there was a perspective that could tell us something new about what we think we already know. And that's why I was attracted to Japanese microbiology. The microbe in the non Western context is often told as a story of medical bacteriology. In fact, there are influential scholars, science studies scholars, who have argued that modern laboratories everywhere are copies of institutions originating in the metropole. And essentially, that's what's left for historians to do is to explain the process of replication in different local contexts outside of the center. Japan's narrative is interesting because it can be told that way in the sense that microbiology there began with imported concepts and institutions in the late 19th century. But there is also another side to it. If you look in the applied sciences, in agriculture and industry, there are a lot of distinctive connections in the 20th century between different areas that are very prominent in Japanese science, but superficially look disparate. If you look behind those connections, you find strong institutions of fermentation science, such as the discipline of agricultural chemistry, and a highly developed way of thinking about microbes as living workers and not just pathogens. I wanted to uncover this little known tradition that developed differently from mainstream trends in Europe and North America in the hope that it might offer a new perspective on microbes and on the history of modern scientific institutions as a whole.
Thank you. Victoria Lee, I want to thank you very much again for coming on to describe your new book. And I want to congratulate you once more on the well deserved recognition it's received, most recently, the ICAS Book Prize in the Humanities for 2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.